Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to Shelf Stories, the channel that tells tales from games, books, and life. And welcome to the One Stop Co-op Shop podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Thank you so much for stopping by for this latest chat with friends. And this man, I've had him on the show before. He was on my Every Night is Game Night podcast talking about Sentinels of the Multiverse. And now we are back talking about Sentinels of the Multiverse. He is the lead designer for that game. He is the person in charge of Greater Than Games, which brings that product to you. And there is, as we speak, we are in the last week of the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter will end. We're releasing this on a Wednesday. Kickstarter will end on a Friday. So we're trying to get this out for the last push, get them to, greater and greater heights. Even though there are stretch goals, greater heights are always good. So this man is Christopher Badell. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm always thrilled. I love it when you do the intro. You're like, when you talk about stories and games, you're like, oh yes, I very much care about stories and games. And you're like, and the co-op shop, I'm like, oh, cooperative games. Like that's my entire aesthetic.
Welcome home, my friend. Bienvenidos a mi casa. That's it.
Bueno, gracias.
All right, so absolutely, we are here for stories. We're here for co-op, and I'm a huge Sentinels Multiverse fan. For the podcast listeners, are going to have to apologize for what I'm about to do, but hold on a second. Hold on.
All right,
here we go.
Are you picking up the monolith? Watch, be careful. Don't throw out your back. Oh my gosh, so full of majesty. Yeah, I've got one of those that lives in the like many people have expressed to me the sadness, and I feel it doesn't fit nicely on most gaming shelf setups.
No, right.
And so I have the game table that I play games at in my house, and it sits on a side table there. So no matter what game you're playing, it's kind of looming over everything.
Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, this one is even worse because I gotta catch my breath.
Oh yeah, you did your day's workout right there.
I have this one's even worse because I have Matthew Bishop's fan-made expansion.
I'm very familiar.
About 15 heroes and 7. So I have all that stuff in there. No sleeves, nothing else fits. But I'm about to add apparently to that box.
Oh man, good luck.
Because right now live is Sentinels of the Multiverse Definitive Edition.
Yeah,
which is what we're talking about. So I'm going to jump right forward.
Sure thing.
And there is one main question that Sentinels has, and I can tell this question is front of your mind, and it is in your updates, and it is in the Kickstarter page. It's like, this game is not a money grab.
Oh yeah,
like that is I could see it, right. And you're going over paragraph by paragraph, and I could see the thing that's like, and it's like basically this game is Sentinels 2, not a money grab.
Yeah,
so,
and I try not to
go into it. So talk about like that journey and encountering that whole sentiment with the reboot of Sentinels.
Right. And so speaking first and foremost as a fan of things, as a player of games, as an enjoyer of media, I get it. I have that same level of skepticality that everybody does, that when you see something and somebody's like, oh, they're just going back to the same old well, they're doing the thing again. Like, we just get another one of these. I feel like I'm shelling out money for this every other day. And like, fair reminder as far as Sentinels the Multiverse goes, we waited. It's not that we necessarily waited. It's not like we wanted to do Definitive Edition. We're like, well, we got to wait for the 10-year mark. It was more that it's been 10 years since we released the original game, and Sentinels the Multiverse has continued being popular all 10 of those years, which is shocking. But we'll talk more about that in a second. I want to get back to the money grab aspect of it.
Thank you to the app, by the way, from
the
folks over at
Candelabra has done a great job with that.
Candelabra, that app is amazing. People are like, I still play Sentinels because I played on the app.
Yeah. So, like, to speak to the ethos of a money grab first, I run a tabletop gaming company. If I cared about making money, I would do something else. Like if I were really interested in, like, I'm going to do some sort of job that's going to make me a bunch of money, I would do some other career. Before I did this, I was doing high school teaching. I don't care about money. Not that I don't care about, like, I obviously want to have enough money to live well. And more importantly, now Greater Than Games now has 20 full-time employees, which is amazing. So I definitely care about the company making money so that it can pay its employees.
The last time I interviewed you was like 3 years ago. It was not 20.
No. I mean, even 3 years ago.
10, yeah.
I think 3 years ago it was maybe around like 10, 11,
Mm-hmm.
12. But like the warehouse force has grown greatly, and we've added even a couple more non-warehouse office people as well, and a few more actually in the last few years. Anyway, it's been an amazing journey. But in that, like, this is I mean, from a purely business mercenary standpoint, of course, as a company, we want to make money. We want to make money so we can pay our employees. We actually recently went through a valuation of the value of the company just for like tax purposes and business purposes. And our accountants were like, your company, like, isn't worth that much, because a lot of companies, when you acquire money as a company, then you like pay it out to your ownership, or you use it to even like acquire stock in other companies. Many companies own stock in other companies to try to build, and you guys don't do that at all. You're like, yeah, no, when we have enough money that we're like, oh, we're making enough money that potentially we could give the owners bonuses. No, we hire more people because we need more people. We need more customer service people. We need more warehouse people. We need a social media person. We just hired a social media person about a month ago, and they're still getting spun up. And that's awesome. But that's what our priority is making the company the best it can be, making the games the best it can be, and taking care of the people that work for the company. Over the course of 2020, we were terrified that we were going to, have to like completely get rid of our workforce and just to survive, and we didn't. And that was shocking and thrilling, and
The
and a lot of
community
scary
really
work.
stepped up. I think that we realized very immediately, because I remember the first Kickstarters that where they were launching in like May of 2020, June of 2020. Should we launch? Should we launch? They all funded, and because people were really like, okay, we have to band together and support companies. And gamers are generally good at this, but it goes back and forth. But I really feel like there was a real coming together and a real outpouring of support.
It's a
In
community.
America, we got stimulus, and we had extra spending money, so like a lot of things came together. Paycheck protection program helped a lot of small businesses. So I think that for all in my channel is pretty known, infamous for like being critical of where I live, and it's like no, I criticize because I love. Well, this is a great place, and we came together and we helped businesses just like Chris's.
And this is, thank you. And this is the thing, is that like, speaking of like criticize places you love, people should feel welcome and even encouraged to criticize things as they see wrong. If you see a company and they're doing a cash grab sort of like rude thing that is rude to their customers, criticize that. If you live in a country and the leadership of your country is making decisions that are harmful to the people that live in that country, you should criticize that. Personally, like, not to get super political, but to get a little political,
welcome to our show.
Right. I am pleased with how the most recent election went, in that I am glad that there was a regime changeover, and yet the people that won, I am really, in the next 4 years, going to be pushing on them a lot. I have written a bunch of letters and made a bunch of phone calls about like, okay, great, you're empowered, do something with that, do something good with that, do something better. Because like, sure, I assume that this new leadership isn't going to make the sort of terrible decisions, but are they going to make good enough decisions? Are they going to make the sort of decisions that actually move us forward? And so like, it's really speaks to a big heart of mine.
Big thing, and it's like, from a business perspective, getting back to like the ethos of money grabs and everything, pretty clear that Greater Than Games is not about the money. It needs to make money, but it is not about the money, or else you would make X, Y, Z, A, B, C different decisions.
Right. We do a lot more. I would even say that we did a better job money grabbing with the original Sentinel stuff by having regular expansions and then mini expansions and then promos that were hard to find, and that was all accidental. That was all, we're starting, we're not really sure, well, we're going to make these things, we're going to do these things on the side. How does it in games work? And we had to learn that the awkward, stumbling way, which was fine. That's how we learned. Now here we are. We're like, okay, that's why we're going to do a Kickstarter. It's not going to have any stretch goals. The stretch goals were the thing that made Oblivion be like this overwrought, super late thing, which like we'll speak to, and we will admit wholeheartedly the things that are our fault. Many things are our fault. We've made many mistakes over the years. So coming into this, we wanted to make something that was like, from the start, we can tell you what it is. Here's the whole thing holistically. It's great. It works exactly like we say it's going to work. And it's like, from the start, what you're getting. And anytime people have questions about like, are you doing this? Are you doing that? In this core game, we can tell you definitively, for Definitive Edition, exactly what we're doing. Are we going to do expansions? Yes. What are going to be in those expansions? Hold on, slow your roll. Let's get this product out first. Let's talk about one thing at a time. But yeah, we want to be above board. We want to be clear. And the big thing for me is that Sentinels: The Multiverse was first released at Gen Con 2011. Gen Con 2011, a lifetime ago. Like, I know I was a different person in 2011 than I am now. And if I know anybody who feels like they're not a different person than they are than they were since 2011. I would urge you to look inside yourself and ask the question of why, because it's been a big 10 years.
And you're a young man, young designer. Everything was just, we're not talking about like people like way later in life. You've been to Gen Con 30 years. Like, you really kind of burst on the scene there.
Yeah, Gen Con 2011 was the first Gen Con I'd ever been to. It was the first tabletop convention. It was the first convention I'd ever been to. Like, it just wasn't a thing. I wrote a game that I wanted to play with my friends. My friend Adam drew all the art in that game, and Adam and I made this product together. Rather, we even made this game together. I wouldn't even say we made the product. It wasn't without Paul, the third business partner. Paul and Adam and I are all owners of the company, and Paul is the person that makes us into, like, he does spreadsheets and he cares about accounting stuff. And all three of us work on all parts of the company, but really the three, without that cooperative element of all three of us, the collaborative teamwork, we never could have made this thing. And we did, and we made the best game we possibly could. And it was pretty good. Like, the gameplay is fun. It's fun to play. But like, if you look at the art from 2011 version of Sentinels Multiverse, and you look at the art in the Oblivion expansion or the recently released RPG that we put out, it's night and day. Because Adam,
don't look too closely at Tachyon. Just as a,
yeah.
Well, that one.
And I love Tachyon.
Yeah,
I love Tachyon's deck. I love playing Tachyon's deck. I think her art is very evocative of what she's doing, but it's not good. It's bad art. Adam hates it. The person who's most critical in the world of that art is the person who drew it. Right. He cannot stand it. And this is what kind of launched the whole thing. Was he was like, okay, what I really want to do, we do reprints of the game all the time, and we're still reprinting the same art and content from 2011. Could we just like redo all the arts in the game and re-release it with all new arts? Is Adam's ask in like late 2018, early 2019. We're like, could this be a thing we did? And we're like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It's been out for 10 years. What would a 10th anniversary look like for this? Okay, I mean, we could redo the art. And Adam and I sat down to go through the first hero deck we ever made, which was the legacy deck, and like look at all the art in it. And in the process of going through it, we just like, there were so many things we wanted to change, not because we were wrong in the first place, but because when we first told these stories, when we first made this game and these decks and all these components in 2010, when we started making it, we knew everything there was to know about Sentinel Comics. Now it's been 10 years of storytelling in that world. In 2017, in January 2017, we started a podcast called The Letters Page, which is just all about the lore and the mythos and the contents and the pages of Sentinel Comics. And
actually, just to pause a second, because Legacy, right? What an interesting character to put first, because he's the buff bot. So like, if the first deck of character doesn't buff anything, he's just alone. But like, just to get the idea that like, I am making a cooperative game. This isn't like, I'm not going to make an attacker deck who could just function on their own, and then I'm going to grow a game out of that. Like, it was always this co-op buff you that from the beginning, and just that indicated like, with Legacy being the first one.
We wanted our number one flagship, most visible front and center character to be this very like almost bland character in terms of how white bread he is. But the thing that he does is he supports his allies. Whatever team of heroes he's with, he's going to make them better. And he cares little to nothing about the spotlight. He doesn't want the spotlight. What he wants is to make sure that you are the best you can be. And he embodies that. And that's true of him as a character. And that's true of the way his deck works. And so we're like, okay,
one of them. Yeah, but the buff bot deck is always something I look for.
It's great. It's a fun time. And every so often people are like, oh, Legacy doesn't feel very powerful because he's like not really doing any damage. He's like, or he's doing most of the damage that everybody at the table is doing. So like, there's those places. And just kind of, it's a great point about Legacy, that like, that's the whole vision, the whole lens of the game is, in what way are you people playing this game at the table going to work together to be the best you all can be? Like, you're all cool. You've all got cool stories. You've got cool cards. You've got cool effects, and you're not enough on your own. And then you can sit there in your own little corner and like do your own thing to work against the villain. And in many cases, you'll make it work. But especially if you've got a harder villain, the places where you're going to shine, the places where you're going to win the game is the way in which you coordinate, you work together, and really be a team.
It's always been the best part of Sentinels. It'll never be a one-player game or a one-character game or a two-character game. It'll always be at least three.
Yeah. You gotta have. I mean, that was one of the things. It is one of the most demanded things for Sentinels and Multiverse is a solo hero mode or a duo hero mode. And I was like, okay, we built it for 3 to 5 heroes. That was the intention. People really want 1 or 2. I spent about 2 solid months of the Definitive Edition time working on solo and duo modes. And I wrote up a bunch of them and I trashed them. And I wrote them up and I trashed them. I wrote them up and I worked on them. I was like, this is a thing that people want all the time. And I kept coming back to that very point that you made, that you started this off by saying that very thing. it's not that the game can't mechanically be made to work with one or two heroes. It's that it's not the story that's being told. It's not the
Right.
point of the play at the table. It's a
I'm
group
a
of
solo
people.
player. I would never ask for that. I
Yeah.
will play 3 heroes. I want
Yeah.
that coordination. Absolutely.
And especially in Definitive Edition, 3 heroes, I feel personally, when I play Definitive Edition now, which I do a lot, that the heroes have just as much going on as they used to, but the way that it's communicated and the way that it's streamlined is so smooth that playing multiple heroes as one person now is a lot more like all your information is much more heads up on the table. All your effects are, it's really clear what's coming from where and what it affects. Like it's just the best version of Sentinels. That's why it
So then it goes
exists.
back to that idea of like, okay, why definitive edition? Is this a money grab? And then I had to stop you before the call because it was bursting forth from you, but you were saying something
Sorry.
like, this is our baby. Like this is actually go ahead.
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead. Give me the spiel.
All right. Yeah. And I would love to say it's a spiel that I've practiced, but I really haven't. It's just a thing that I've said it a couple of times to people when they've asked me about this. And it's really true that like as a creator, I have to wrestle with the harsh truth that a lot of creators who had early success experience, which is that the first big thing that I made publicly was Sentinels: The Multiverse. I'd written other things before then. I had made other stories and things before that, but it's the first big thing that I published and put out. And it got to be quite popular right off the bat. And as we added more things to it, as we did more over the years, it got even more and more popular. And like I am known in the industry for making Sentinels: The Multiverse. And there is a solid chance that I will never make anything better, ever make anything that is more influential, that is more recognized, that is more, that is a more successful product. That might be it. Sentinels: Multiverse might be, I might have peaked in 2010. And like, I know that as a writer, I didn't. I know that as a storyteller, as a game mechanics maker, I didn't. But the thing that I made, the thing that I wrote in 2010 is still the most popular selling thing that I've ever made. So if this game has been out since 2011 and it's been successful since 2011, I feel like I owe it to Sentinels: The Multiverse to give it its best shot at being. There's still new people coming to Sentinels: The Multiverse all the time. What if they got a version of Sentinels that looked like Definitive Edition looks? And so as a result, I've got three groups of people that I'm aiming Sentinels Definitive Edition at. There's the people who've never played Sentinels before, who've never heard of it. Of course, I want them to have like any version of Sentinels for them would do because it's brand new to it. But what if they have a version that has really nice art and the story is a lot more cohesive and the gameplay is a lot more fluid? Obviously, that's better. There's people who maybe played it once or twice in the past, or like played it at their friend's house and were like, I don't know. Like the art's pretty, and the mechanics are a little clunky, and there's some
too much tracking,
stuff.
too much
tracking.
Stuff.
Right.
-1 lightning and +1 fire, and the environment's doing this, and
right.
Right.
I get it. I don't disagree. I understand that. And so like, okay, what if I can give you a version that solves for that? So that's the second set. The other set is people who love Sentinels and who have all the things. And those are the people that are most likely to be upset with me. And I use the word upset very intentionally because I've had people be very upset with me in the last couple of weeks. I've had I posted a big post on the Oblivion Kickstarter, not to tell people, hey, come look at this, but specifically to say, hey, let me explain why. Let me say why I'm doing this, because I know a lot of people are mad, and I want to give you my heart about where this is coming from.
You came on this very show, my Every Night is Game Night, which was the old podcast, and I asked you, is Oblivion truly the end? And you were like, yes, it is the end, the end, the end.
Yeah,
and
100%. Yeah, right. Like, and I was telling you the absolute truth. Like the truth from that Christopher knew that was the end. And it wasn't until like it was in late 2019, because even when I told you that was the end, if there'd been a question of like, oh, will you re-release a new art version? I'm like, yeah, but the game's not going to change. The game's going to stay the same. Adam will do the art, but this game's
no
the
new
same.
Characters and no new story.
Right. Everything. Like, why would I ever add to it? And the answer became when Adam and I were going through the art, and it's like, oh, we could do better. And I never thought that before. I always thought like, oh, sure, like little tweaks here and there, but not like an ostensibly better game. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are like, but I love Sentinels. Sentinels is perfect. I don't want you to do, I don't think you could do better. And I don't want you to do this because not only do I not want to buy this product, because if somebody doesn't want to buy the product, then it back the Kickstarter. Great, please don't. I'm not personally offended by that.
Right.
I'm not professionally offended by that. I'm not creatively offended by that. If it's not for you, if you love everything you have for Sentinels and you never want to get anything else, that's fine. I'm thrilled that you enjoy it so much. But if you're like, okay, I don't want you to do this so much, I don't even want this thing to exist. Like, why? Why do you feel that level of like, I don't want this thing, and I also want no one else to have this thing? Like,
right.
I understand not
Okay.
wanting the cash grab. I understand
Mhm.
not wanting the extra stuff, but this is like for the pureness of the art of it. And still, yes, it's a product. Yes, I'm hoping to sell it, but I could be making some other product, and I am also making some other products. I'm working on. We are actually chatting over email today. I'm working on writing a bunch of stuff right now. And
RPG.
yeah,
You're a big
right.
RPG guy.
I have a ton of RPG stuff coming up. I've got other games as well that are coming out. I'm still working on other things, but I would always regret it if I didn't. It's the same thing when we started the company. Very quickly, the idea is like, oh, we'll do this company thing, and on the side, Adam will have his day job, Paul will have his day job, I'll have my day job, and on the side, we'll do this game company thing. And within a couple of months of founding the company, it became incredibly clear that at least somebody needed to dedicate their whole person to this, or we were never gonna like it. It wasn't gonna succeed. And we could be like, okay, well, let's just have it be a semi like on the side thing, and it's just never gonna go anywhere. And I wasn't content with that. Paul has kids, or was about to have kids actually at that point. I was like, no, you've got to keep doing your day job. You can't quit and work for this game company that might not take off. And Adam was living in California dealing with things out there at the time. But I was like, okay, I'm just going to take 6 months and quit my job and quit everything and just full time do this game company. Because if I do that and it fails, so be it. These things happen. But if I don't do it and it never takes off for the rest of my life, I'll be like, wow, I wonder if that could ever been something. And so this is kind of the same thing where it's like, if we don't make Definitive Edition, we just get to watch Sentinels fade into the history as people go, yeah, that game is good, but it's incredibly dated. Okay, well, anyway.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, so again, like as I'm reading as I'm reading all the updates and everything, so like, okay, is this a money grab? No. This is for the art. This is for like the best edition of Sentinels. And if anybody who's ever created anything, anybody who like, and this is like, I think this is a universal thing, like you don't have to be a gamer to know this. Like maybe you've created something, a song or just a piece of art or something where it's like, okay, man, if I had the chance to like kind of do this and make it its best self, then that who wouldn't take that? And then you're taking it, you're running into this idea that like there are a lot of people who are kind of burned out on hype and they're burned down cash grabs and like so I take it as like, okay, it isn't like personal, there's like a burnout that has happened in the board amongst board games. Is that kind of how you take that?
Yeah, absolutely. I very much see that, and I understand that. But at the same time, the 10th year anniversary edition of a bunch of different games do very well. We've every like 3 to 5 years, I feel like it is, we get a new version of Twilight Imperium, and there's new Civilization games that are coming out all the time. And but games that have made it 10 years, like it's the opposite of unheard of for 10th year anniversary editions to exist. So I wish that. The other thing is that this year I get to be in the ranks of people putting out a creative thing in 2021 that is a like I think for good reasons, remakes of older things. One of those is the video game Mass Effect. In May of this year, we're getting the fully remastered Mass Effect game. And I'm sure there are some people that are like, wait a minute, I bought all the Mass Effect games in the past. Why don't I get this one for free? And the answer is because that's not how products work. Like
There are so many people that are like so jazzed to go back into that world.
Right, exactly. And so there's that. The other thing, the thing that is really fun to me is a particular recording artist just released her very first album. Taylor Swift just re-put out her first album ever. And I am so excited for her because it's a super cool thing that she's doing. This is some really inside baseball stuff, but the stuff that she's doing in the music industry with retaining the rights to her masters, her re-releasing her albums is such a baller move.
Yeah. So if anybody doesn't know, again, we this channel is about going past the gaming verse thing. So Taylor Swift, I'm sure people have known, Bad Blood and the different songs that she's had. So like her first 6 albums were under a label, and that label was acquired by another company, and that company was a not great. Basically, the mustache twirling capitalist, kind of image and all kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, not going to give you the rights, not going to like, we retain the rights to sell all your masters, the original copies. So, I mean, so how she has responded, and she tried to respond in different ways. She's like, you know what, I'm just going to re-record. So I'm going to re-record my first 6 albums, and I'm going to do, I'm going to get all the collabs that, because like if you're an artist, but by the time our second album came out, collaborations, and, I'm going to go, even though like I've progressed past this, the first ones were very country, and then she became, pop and very, mutable art. I'm going back, and I'm going to re-release this stuff, and I'm going to ask my fans to delete all that old stuff. because the old stuff is still going to exist. And I'm going to ask my old fans to listen to this new stuff. And if it makes enough money, then this becomes my new master, and I can kind of reclaim my, my autonomy. I think that is fascinating.
I think it's so great that I love seeing artists to be able to retain the rights to their stuff. The other thing that's really cool about it is that a lot of, like, if you would see a song that's used in a television show or a commercial or a movie, they get the rights from whoever owns the masters of those to do those. But also in many of those cases, depending on the type of licensing, they have to get permission from the recording artist and the master holder, which you mostly can get. But for the past like 4 years, she's been refusing rights on everything. She's been like, no, nobody can use this stuff. If you ask me for permission, no, you can't use it. And now she's put out this new album, and she is saying, oh yeah, by the way, I'm allowing people to use these if you want.
Use that.
Oh, It's so strong. It's like such a cool move. I love it.
Okay, so Sentinels is now coming out with the definitive edition. I think we've answered that question.
Yeah.
This game should exist. There are lots of 10th anniversaries of a lot of different things. I think the difference here, though, so like if I'm playing Ticket to Ride 10th anniversary, it's basically the same game. Right. With the better components, and I could pass if I wanted to. Right. Or if I'm playing, whatever it is, Pandemic or Carcassonne, sure. they don't change that formula. If you want to change the formula, get the expansions. Here, you're really rebooting stuff.
I am.
And I'm looking at it because, the first time I looked at it, it's like, okay, is it just going to be new art? But then I started reading updates. Bunker is basically a re-engineered deck, and Absolute Zero is basically a re-engineered deck. And I'm like, the first part of me is like, I've spent a lot of money on this thing. Am I going to have to spend more? But the second part is Bunker, and those two particular, and then we could talk about the other ones. Those were the most like dated decks.
Yeah.
And the hardest to run and the most frustrating because they were so dependent on equipment and so many things remove your equipment. So I'm just like sitting there drawing cards. So I was torn. So like, I just wanted to get your mode. Now we can get it into the definitive edition.
Right.
And talk about some of those experiences, hearing from people saying like their encounters with the old decks and the mechanisms and what inspired you to kind of make some changes.
Yeah. So the first thing that was most inspirational to me in terms of making changes, because when we started it, we're like, well, we're going to go through Legacy's deck, and Legacy's deck is going to be great and straightforward and simple and easy because he just works. He works exactly right. He does exactly what you want him to do. And so we started going through there, and I think we got 2 or maybe 3 cards in before we're like, oh, well, but really we should change that. And we're like, oh no, we're making changes in Legacy's deck. Nothing is safe. Like if Legacy's deck is going to change at all, then anything's up for grabs. And like, sure enough, every deck had some changes. And the thing that primarily inspired those changes, the amount of painful to play, not that anything is particularly painful to play, but the amount of like struggle, like you talked about with Bunker, the struggle to play, if that element exists, we're very aware of this. We've been playing this game for a long time now, and we're like, you see, this one, it's just clunkier than others. Like, so that deserves
an interesting assumption, though, because I think sometimes when you are the creator, there can be some blinders, and I have spoken with I've been doing this for a long time, interviewing designers, and I sometimes I kind of like of like, designer will say something and it's like, that's not the issue, and for whatever reason, they kind of filter out what maybe like from a player's perspective, what the issue is. So like, not all that I can't take that for granted that like, a designer knows that Bunker's deck isn't like, relative to other things or like that. Right. So, I mean, just to kind of like talk about like, have you had those moments of like people coming up to you, or is it mostly you kind of know?
So a lot of it is we know, but a lot of it is we know because we played it, and also because people come up in conventions. They're like, oh, and here's the thing: people come to conventions and say, oh, I really like Sentinels Multiverse, but I don't like Haka. His deck just doesn't work for me. And I'm like, that is the deck doesn't work for you thing. But when I hear, I love Bunker, but I have a hard time getting him off the ground. It's like, you like it, but it's still not working for you. Like that's a different set of information to me. But so something is, like I said, in the last 10 years, we've been playing this game a lot. We've also been listening a lot. I try to make as many opportunities for myself to be accessible to people who are playing my games and interested in games possible. I respond to people on Twitter. I hang out at conventions. I try to do these things because I think that's really important as a person who's making a thing, especially something that is still like actively coming out over the years when we were making original Sentinels and the expansions. Like I was like, I want to know what people are experiencing when they're playing these things. And so I had a lot of information from that. And then as Adam and I are going through the original decks to make Definitive Edition, I'm like, okay, so I know what things I've heard amounts of feedback from. And as you know, I'm very good at talking. I'm very good at saying a bunch of things about this game. And I'm also very good at making the game say a bunch of things about itself. Like the game has a lot to say. It's got a lot of text on cards. It's got a lot of things that it communicates to you through the game. So a big important part of this process to me was the very awesome group, the very keyed in and aware and passionate group of playtesters that I have. I have playtesters that I have on a forum on my website that we've had, and some of these playtesters have been with us since late 2011. Not a lot. We don't have a lot that have been that long, but there are some that have, and there's some that we've gotten
like
all through the
Silverhawk.
years.
Is that
Like
was
who?
that, there was a female gamer from England. Was her name is Silverhawk or Silver
Oh,
something?
Silverleaf. Yeah.
Silverleaf, yeah.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
folks like that whole like group of
Right.
people. I used to
Yep.
play games online with them.
Oh, very
It
cool.
was crazy. Yeah, and they would come in every once in a while with like, okay, they're working on this deck, or they're working on we're doing a demo over here. It's like, oh wow, I get to demonstrate some weird deck that's coming out in Oblivion. Great.
Yeah. No, this is the thing.
Still with you, huh?
A lot of them are. Some of them have disappeared, and it's fun because since we made the announcement about Definitive Edition, which we did in January, because we started playtesting in mid 2020 for this stuff. We built everything, and then mid 2020 we launched playtesting, and a lot of people didn't come out of the woodwork. A lot of people did. A lot of people didn't. We're like, I'm missing so and so and so and so. I'm not going to be like, hey, where are you? You got to do this. So you don't got to do anything. You're playtesting. You're doing me a favor. We announced Definitive Edition in January, and a bunch of people are kind of like, oh, what's this? And they get people showing up and they're looking at stuff, and I start to see some old familiar names of people that I haven't seen in a long time. And I'll get to what they said in a second. But what the people in mid 2020 said, the number one reaction when I posted this was that here's what we're doing. Here's this thing. I did a video call with them to be able to like tell my whole heart to them, and they're like, okay, Christopher, we think you're great, we think you're a great designer, we think you're a lot of fun, you're a great storyteller. We don't think this is a good idea. We don't like this. We're not. No, why? Sentinels is perfect. Why are you messing with it? Why are you touching it? Why are you doing this? Like, do the art new version, fine. Don't touch the mechanics. Leave it alone. And I'm like, I hear you, and I appreciate this viewpoint. However, let me give you all these files. Let me give you all these files. Let me have you take a look at them, and let me know what you think. And they came back, and they were not like, they didn't come back to say, this is great and we love it. They came back to say, okay, we are convinced you should do this thing, but now we've got a lot of work to do. And those next few months were great because I'd be like, okay, this and this and this is what I want to do. And they're like, fine. But like, oh, there's so many opinions flying around from people who have like, I value those opinions so much. And there'd be times people would say, oh, I think it should be like this. I'm like, Mom, no, it's not going to be like that. Like I have a direction that I want to go with these decks, but also I want to hear the biggest important thing for me about these is how it makes people feel when they're playing it. Because if I say, oh, when you're playing Tachyon, you should feel like a speedster. And that's one thing I use Tachyon. She's a terrible example. You feel like a speedster when you're playing Tachyon. You do lots of little things and then you have like big payoffs for them. Like we nailed that feeling from day one. Didn't nail the feeling for Bunker. That's the main problem. So that's a long way around on the story here, getting all the way back to the what was the inspiration for changing Bunker?
I'm starting to get to the point where it's like, okay, just let you go. You will eventually bring it back home. You've been doing this for a long time, my friend. It's all good. Yeah. It's all good.
But so yeah, the inspiration for changing Bunker was less of a, are the mechanics good or not? Are the story good or not? No, I know the story is good. Like, and I'm patting myself on the back way I realize, but still, I know the story is good because I've told stories about Bunker, divorced from the card game, just as like, here's a story of a thing Bunker does. And people are like, oh, I love the story. Great. So I know the story is good. And the role he fills in the card game is an important and useful one, but people aren't connecting the story to that role. That role doesn't feel like that story. There's the problem. So what I need to do is I need to make a version of Bunker that feels like a guy in a walking tank, and he's running lots of subsystems. He's got guns that are shooting, but it's not him that's up there shooting the gun by hand. He has a gun that's shooting because he's controlling it. He's paying attention to his switches and his levers, and he's driving this thing, and he's got eyes on so many different screens, and he knows what's going on. That's who Bunker is. That's what it should feel like. That's what his stories are about, and that's what the deck should communicate. And once we got that happening in playtesting, people are like, this feels like the Bunker that you talk about in stories. That's a success. And now we just got to say, okay, should this number be a 4 or a 3 or a 5? Like that playtesting, that's the relatively easy part. But the first part is dialing in what that emotional experience is when playing a game.
Absolutely. So then Bunker has been completely re-engineered.
Yeah, Bunker is like, he's got some cards that are named the same thing as other cards. He's got a flat cannon, he's got an omni cannon, he's got a grenade launcher. Sure, great. He's got his mode cards. The modes work very differently, but he still has turret mode and recharge mode and upgrade mode. Great. But it is the feel and the run of that deck is really different. There's one card, I'm gonna pull up the document here. This is Great radio. There's one card in his deck that has a flavor text I quote it all the time because I'm every so often you write a thing and you're like, oh yeah, that's really good. And
I
he
feel the
has
same way about my video show. It's like, yeah, that was good. I'm gonna watch
yeah,
it again.
yeah. That's the nice thing is like it's important as a creator, like it's important as a creator to be humble and to be aware of like whether even if you're really jazzed about a thing you're doing, you're not sure if your audience connects to it or anything. It's also important as a creator to be aware of what you're doing that slaps. Every so often I do a thing
Absolutely.
and I'm like, you know what? That joke that I wrote may have landed a little bit flat with the audience, but I'm really proud of it. Good. Have that awareness of what you think your good
Absolutely.
work is. But there's this one flavor text I just quote it all the time, and so people will love it. For the card upgrade mode, I wanted a flavor text that spoke to this very thing. And so the quote on it is from Bunker, and he's saying, "No, it's not like driving a car. Okay, it's like driving a car, blindfolded, with shoes on your hands, and also you're late." And like that's what I want. He's like, "You're driving the bunker suit. It's a bunch of things you got to manage, but
Right.
if you can do your job,
hmm
you're gonna have a great time."
It's
So
a massive machine.
mhm.
Like you are like that's what I've wanted to like because Bunker is not Iron Man. Bunker,
He's
Iron
not
Man
Iron
is
Man.
like a suit. Like that you are driving a tank that
Yeah.
has all these modes. But then we don't have to go into the whole thing. Like it felt very fun, and I could tell like it developed because like you'd have later characters. Like the power on Bunker was draw a card. You do the power draw card. There you go. And every like down the road you get to the later characters and they all like draw a card and get +1 damage and draw a card do this and it's like Bunker, what poor Bunker. So now like things like that were addressed.
Yeah.
Absolute Zero. I have to do Absolute Zero.
Yeah.
So like he's a character that I love to play. He's a character that when he works, he's amazing.
Mhm.
Because the feeling of like, okay, I'm showing up and I need to like, augment myself.
Mhm.
And now once I augment myself and then I can, like, wreck the world. The problem was when you couldn't augment yourself,
You're stuck
then you just
forever.
sat there, you
Yeah.
really did nothing.
Right. And this is the thing is that so with Absolute Zero, I considered Absolute Zero to be less of a design challenge than Bunker because Bunker, I don't feel like Bunker, like most players, never got Bunker to the place where his thematics matched his mechanics. Absolute Zero, you do. You get
Right.
there. It takes work and it can easily fail. And there's a bunch of weird hiccups, but you can get there. So
Right.
I just had to do a lot. I had to do less reworking from the top and a lot of filing off corners for Absolute Zero. And so like, pulling up that spreadsheet. That like just to give you some ideas, so he has more ways of getting his important cards. He has two cards that are really important. They're the null point calibration unit and the isothermic transducer. Like people that play Absolute Zero a lot get those two names like drilled into their heads, like, those are the two cards. You got to have those two cards because without those two cards you die. Your own cards and powers kill you. Okay, so clearly I must have those cards, and those two cards still exist and they are still key to get, but you have a lot of new ways of getting them. And on both of those two cards, a really important upgrade was each of them gained a bit of text at the top of them, which the first line of text on both of those cards is, after this card is played, you may play one card.
Mhm.
And that is such a quality of life upgrade because it means if you have your isothermic transducer and your null point calibration unit in your hand, you go,
Boom, boom.
I play one, I play the other, and I play something else. I am firing on all cylinders in one turn. If
Mhm.
you don't have them, you play one of as many other cards that goes and gets the cards you need, and then you play those cards. So Absolute Zero goes from nothing to himself as you know him to be very quickly. And when he's wiped out, so some villain comes along and destroys all of your item cards, like, oh, that's terrible. Hold on. Ugh. Pain, and I'm back. So like you still have to do the work. I didn't want people like, I was like, do I want these things to be just like built into his character card? No, I want the idea because a
Yeah.
big part of Absolute Zero's story is, oh no, I can't just operate in the real world because I have this like terrible cryo disability that means that I don't get to just be
Mhm.
doing normal stuff. I have to do the extra work. So I wanted the players to do the extra work. And additionally, he has this extra level of weakness that if someone breaks his gear, that's really bad for him. It's not like I have a sword. If you break my sword, oh no, I don't have a sword. It's I have a sword that keeps me alive. And if you break my sword, I suddenly start dying. Like I want that feeling in that deck.
Mhm.
But we got there. And so he has he more quickly gets that feeling you described of like, I feel like I'm doing all the things, and I'm taking in the heat damage, and I'm putting out the cold damage, and everything's going great. Like, awesome, you get there.
I'm asking Ra to shoot me in the face so I can sweat out.
Bring me that fire damage. I love a little bit extra fire. It's the idea of like, okay, Ra's like, oh, I'm gonna hit 3 targets for 2 fire damage each, and Absolute's like, by the way, if you don't mind, it's a little chilly over here.
That's right. Okay. So Absolute, but does Absolute Zero, is he functional at all without any of the cards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he's got stuff he can do without them, but one of the main things he can do without them is get them back, get them quickly. Okay. So like, sure, you could be like, okay, I'm going to do this damage, I'm going to do these things, but like, because I wanted to make sure that yes, he's functional without them, but he's a little bit more afraid of the world, because he should be. Without the piece of his suits that keep him alive, he does need to be a little bit more concerned. He can still do things, and I think that the thing that got us there in terms of feeling for him was when we put out the termination promo for him. The termination promo was based on the idea that he's outside of his suit, and he's like just covered himself in the ice that he can make with his own power, and he's going to go fight without having the suit, just with having the ice. And this was this very dangerous, like high risk, high reward variant where you played him and you're like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to necessarily go get those things. I'm just going to be really dangerous to everyone, including myself. So like, okay, what if we can duplicate that feeling of like, when you're outside the suit, you're a threat. When you're inside their suit, you yourself are no longer one of the targets of that threat. So
right. Okay. Interesting. Those are the two that stuck out as like almost like, quasi broken without like, certain things happening, but everybody, and so you have 10 characters, right? Is that
12 heroes?
12 heroes. Wow.
Yeah.
So then,
because the original core game had 10 heroes, which it was the Freedom 5 plus Fanatic, Haka, Ra, Visionary, and Tempest was in the original core game.
Okay.
And in this core game, you've got the Freedom 5 plus their intern Unity, who was a mini expansion before us, sold alone standalone deck. Now she's part of the core game because she's very important to the Freedom 5 stories. She should be in there with them. And then you have the Prime Wardens, who Fanatic, Tempest, and Haka are on the Prime Wardens, and they were in the core game before. But now we add also Argent Adept and Captain Cosmic to the core game to round out the rest of the Prime Wardens. And then we still have Ra, who was part of the core game before, because Ra is a frequent ally and friend of the Prime Wardens. Now, as a result, since we've added a number of heroes, to get to 12, we also removed one, Visionary. Visionary is not in the core game anymore. There is an expansion she's going to be a part of. I have no doubt that we'll get there, especially given how well Definitive Edition stuff is going now. But when we looked at the stories, we're like, Visionary is not really part of these stories as much, and we wanted to really thematically tie everything together better than it ever had been. So those are the 12 heroes.
So then, that's the other part of what my concern was. So like, you can have a definitive edition, right? And so like, let's even allow that. But is it going to be like every character that's been released, every villain that's been released, are they going to get the definitive treatment? Am I going to buy a whole new suite of Sentinels to replace my old set?
Right. And this is the question that you have to answer for yourself: is, are you going to buy a whole new suite? Because excuse me, we are going to re-release every hero, every villain, every environment that has ever been made in the past for Sentinels: The Multiverse in a Definitive Edition product. Our plan is we have the one core game that's got 12 heroes, 6 villains, and 6 environments. And then we have 5 expansions. We don't have a bunch of mini expansions. We don't have a bunch of mini promos or variants or other things. Everything's going in a big box, including all of the variants, including all of the every other little special thing we've ever made. Those will all be repurposed and put into the box. We'll have these 5 boxes, and each box will have a pile of heroes, a pile of villains, a pile of environments, and some other things too, like the events that we're introducing here in the core game. And so like, if you like Definitive Edition, if Definitive Edition proves itself to you to be worth it enough that you want to go down that road, we aim to have a series of products that you can just pick up the straightforward, simple, yes, here's the box, it has everything of this next set in it, and we're going to get again to that point of like, okay, these are everything, it's out, and it's all been retouched. Because we talked about things that people say that designers could have blinders about. I have no blinders about the fact that people just don't really enjoy Oblivion that much. They're aware that it's a big, cool fight, but it's like a 4 to 6 hour game. What? Like for me, it takes me about 3 hours, but I'm also aware that like I know the text on every single card, so it's just not fair. people enjoy the vengeance mode, but not as much as regular Sentinels. And if we're going to bother playing a game of Sentinels, why don't we just play regular Sentinels? Why are we playing vengeance mode? Okay, well, what if and I already have the ways I'm going to do this, it's great, but what if I rewrite those modes to where you still get the same feeling of the point of vengeance mode is you're playing against a team of villains. So it's a team of hero against a team of villains. How can I replicate that in the game without creating something that feels like a slog, that feels like this is a setup and tear down nightmare? With Oblivion, can I give you a big multiverse ending event that feels like all of the things you've ever done have come to this one moment, and it's going to take everything you've got to win, and it's big and it's important and it's serious, but it doesn't demand you to sit at a table for 46 hours and look at 16 different things at once, and the tracking is like augmented to like all of those different things. I have heard all the complaints, and some of the complaints that I've heard through the years are, I don't like the fact that the card text is in Comic Sans, to which I say the card text has never been in Comic Sans. I would never use Comic Sans in a card game. I'm not a monster. Papyrus, I'll use Papyrus all day, but not Comic Sans. Just kidding. But there's some complaints. There's some complaints from people like, oh, I don't like how Argent Adept, one of his instruments is called this, but I think it should be called this from a historical standpoint. It's like, great. Those are complaints that I hear, and I say, I appreciate that you're playing the game so closely that you're paying attention to these things and you like them. That's different from the complaint of like, man, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to enjoy it, but the game itself is keeping me from enjoying it because it's too clunky. It's too weird. It's asking too much of the player. I'm like, great, please give me the opportunity to solve for all those things. So yeah, that's kind of that's where I'm coming at here. So yeah, I'm going to rebuild everything. And yeah, I know that there's going to be people like, I have to rebuy everything. So the answer is like, no, you don't have to rebuy everything. But my hope is that I make something that, like, you're going to, when I say you, when I say you, I mean anybody who's interested in this game, either someone who's been playing it for a long time or someone who's brand new. You are presumably going to buy some games over the next 6 years. If you buy one of those games over the next 6 years, each year being one of these Sentinels expansions, I hope that I can prove to you that it's worth it. And if I can't, if you're looking at it like, oh, I don't know, this expansion doesn't look good to me. Oh, great, please, by all means, don't buy it. But if I can convince you, again, not for product purposes, but because I think I'm making a holistically true version of the multiverse story.
So everything. So like, everything from, because Oblivion was not that long ago, right?
So you say that Oblivion was kickstarted 5 years ago. So it was 5 years.
You're right. Wow. You're right. Okay.
Yeah. So right. Like, I agree. Oblivion wasn't that long ago, but the amount of time
it didn't, it shipped like maybe 2 years ago, right?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Oh my God.
Right. So that's the thing, is that like, yeah, I agree. Okay. Oblivion just happened, but it happened
3
years ago.
Is a decent amount of time.
And by the time that Oblivion is coming out, the Oblivion content is coming out in the Definitive Edition, it will have been, I think, 8 or 9 years since the release of Oblivion. So yeah, no, I agree. It does feel like it just came out, but it didn't. Right. Like,
I guess in a sense of like, so I think like a stuntman, or some of the heroes, like they're like the obvious growth in the making of the character, like those characters are just like better. Objectively,
it's certainly smoother, and
smoother.
And the trick is the smoother play results in feeling more powerful, because instead of spending your time, this is a big thing I did with Sentinels Definitive Edition, and this is not just heroes, this is also villains, this is also environments. It's, again, the feel of the play. If at the table you feel like you're fiddling with cards, if you feel like you're dealing with modifiers and tracking things, you don't feel like you're being a superhero. That's one of the reasons that Tachyon and Ra from the first set, people feel awesome about, because with Ra, you're like, I burn it, I burn it, I burn it, I burn it, haha.
Right.
And with
Complexity 1, fire.
Right. And even with Tachyon, you see your grand plan unfold over the course of the game. You're like, oh, I'm going to do a lot of things. Like, what are you doing? You're just doing some little stuff. You're like, yeah, just doing some little stuff. Check me back in like 3 rounds. Don't worry about it. Like, right. So that's like, that feeling of Tachyon feels great. What if people had this thing where they feel like, hey guys, we're working as a team, we're helping, and also, little do you know, I'm working on a cool thing on the side. I want everybody to have the opportunity at least a couple of times over the course of a game where they get to look at the other players and say, hey guys, hold on. I know you're looking at stuff for your turn, but look at this. I'm about to do this and this and this. And like that moment of getting to exult in the time you had at the table, and the other players, because you're playing a cooperative game and you're all working towards the same end, get you to go, oh my gosh, that's so great. That's so awesome. And you're all rejoicing in your shared triumph. Like, those are the moments that I want to capitalize on. Less
Mhm.
of the, hey, if I played this, does this happen before or after that thing? Like in any game, you're going to have those questions. In any game, you're going to have those mechanics because you're doing a physical tabletop game, and so somebody has to be able to answer those questions when you're learning it. But what if I can minimize on those interactions and maximize on the let's feel like we're telling a 4-color superhero story right here on the table? So.
Okay. And so, I mean, I imagine that you've gotten the feedback from the playtester group and like, the hardcore fans about not just the definitive edition, but like the idea that you're really releasing everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
still kind of processing. And at the end of the day, I guess the market will decide.
Right,
It's
exactly.
Like, okay,
that's the thing is if we put out this core game and people love it, great. And then we put out the expansion and people are like, wait, more? Are you going to do that? Like, we'll stop, certainly. But I will say the people that were like the playtesters that were the hardest to convince that were immediately against it early on, and it's one of the sections I have on the Kickstarter is testimonials from playtesters right there on the main page of the Kickstarter. And I've heard some people in the comments, I've seen some people in the comments say, oh, you've got testimonials from your playtesters, but of course they like it. I'm like, oh, I don't think you understand. They hated it. They were so mad. They did not want this. I put this up here because these are my harshest critics. These are the people that have a direct line to me. They can reach out to me any time of day and I'm going to see their messages. Even if I don't respond to it immediately, I'm going to see it. And they can say, Christopher, the thing you're making, it's bad and it's stupid and you should feel bad. And it works. I do feel bad. And so like they have that power. And
I've absolutely played with these people. Sentinels used to have play every like Tuesday or something. This was before even like Discord. Like, we would just play. I think it was like on a Google Doc that we would play or something like that, or like through a Google Doc because people would like make spreadsheets and everything. And these people are like they're super fans, obviously.
Right.
But that's the thing. Like they're super fans, so they're super fans of the first edition.
Right, right.
And
I had to prove it to them that this was worth it. And now the Discord that they're on, because I have a Discord for them, they cannot stop talking. They're like, Christopher, when is the new stuff? When are you gonna get stuff for the new expansion? I'm like, I'm giving you some. I'll give you more soon. We're already starting playtesting on the expansion that will come out next year. And they're like, more, give us more. They're so into it. I've the fact that I converted them. The fact that the definitive edition converted them so thoroughly and so deeply really leads me to believe that this is the right choice. This is the thing. The other thing that leads me to believe that this is the right choice is that for all of the negative comments and the negative feedback that I got when I posted on the Oblivion Kickstarter, which, like you said, Oblivion feels like it was just yesterday. So when I posted an update there saying, hey guys, we're doing this definitive edition, I got a bunch of vitriol and I invited it. I asked for it. Like truly, I knew what I was walking into. And I stayed in the comments the rest of that day answering questions as they popped up. And even that said, though there was a very vocal few dozen people that were very upset and that could not be consoled and that referred to the thing that I was doing as a slap in the face to the Sentinels fandom and the board game community, strong words, very well. They felt that way, and I'm not here to tell them to not feel that way. But for the number of people that felt that way, a far larger number of people silently, without comment, went over to the Definitive Edition Kickstarter and backed it, which I did not ask for. I was not there to be marketing.
Right.
I was there to say, here's why we're doing this thing. And me saying, here's why we're doing it was persuasive to a large number of people that we could see the numbers of them coming over. So like that to me tells me that the thing we're doing here does have an audience, is resonating with its fans, and yes, it's going to take some convincing. And honestly, I don't mind that. I like it. I like that people are not just like blindly buying anything I make because, like I said, this is my life's work, right? So if I make it and people just go, oh, cool, yeah, we'll buy it, sure, and then they don't care, that's one thing. But if they care this deeply, and then we'll see this fall, if people play it and they like it and they're into it, cool. That tells me I still got it,
Right. So the most difficult ones you mentioned before were villains of the multiverse, or like the team setup.
Right.
And I remember because I remember that was, there the whole time, like you had the first Vengeance box and like, wow, this is so cool and everything, but wow, that's a lot of tracking. And then the villains came out and it's like, okay, less tracking, but oh man, there's still like a whole lot of stuff. Like there was a lot of but, and then Oblivion came on, it did like a lot of but. How many environments?
Right.
So like, is that all getting re-engineered, from the ground up? Is that all like, is it going to be just a completely different experience? Like just like, forget everything that I ever knew type thing? Or is it just going to be like the same thing, but tweaked and kind of, reworked a little bit?
More like the first thing than the second thing, more like a completely new experience than what you knew, but tweaked. Because the thing that I would say is that honestly, when a game of Vengeance or Villains of the Multiverse style play, when you're playing against a team of villains as a team of heroes, I've played many of those games. I mean, we wouldn't have put it out if we couldn't get to that point. We got to that point, but it was just still too arduous. But many of those games, when you play them, if you're willing to get up the fortitude to get it on the table and play it, they can feel awesome. They can feel this super cool thing of we're all working together, but oh no, so are they, and they've got their synergies, and like that clash can feel amazing. And same thing I feel with the Oblivion scenario. That when you play the Oblivion thing, oh man, it's this big long thing and it's this ton of work. But if you're willing to get a group of people who are up for the challenge and you spread it all out and you pay attention to the battle zones, you do the thing. By the end of it, you're like, we did it. We saved the like that was it. That's the whole shebang. We saved all of reality right there. And it felt like a fight for all of reality. Great. Those experiences, I'm not looking to change those experiences. I'm looking to give people those experiences in ways that don't have all of the bet hedging that I just had to do. When I said, oh, well, you do this, and then you have the experience. What if you just got to have the experience and you had to do,
or if you
had
have
a hard fight,
like the belt tightening, it's like, okay, I'm gonna get into this, and it's
right.
like, okay, I'm gonna, and you don't want people to feel that way for a game.
Yeah, right. You want people to be like, oh, this game's gonna be hard. Hard doesn't mean logistically challenging to put the things on the table. It means, oh, the villain's gonna kill us. Like that's a different definition of hard. I want hard to be, this could be scary for our characters, but it's not psychically painful for the players. So
okay, so that's the story, right? And and it's like take it or leave it. The market will decide.
Right. Yeah. And if people ultimately aren't into it, so be it. I am, like I said, I'm convinced, and I am dedicated to making this, to putting this out in the best way it can be. That the way that I wish that I could have put it out in the past, but I did not have the experience, and I definitely didn't have the resources. I mean, as I mentioned, we have a lot more employees in our company now, and we we've got amazing graphic designers. Ray Henderson and Daryl Lauder are both doing a ton of amazing graphic design work for this. Which, if you've seen the Kickstarter, you've seen that the cards look better. Just like everything looks so crisp. Adam's art, he's doing amazing art for, like, there's so many things.
The Omni Cannon is my seal approved on the Omni Cannon.
Oh yeah.
Like it tells the story of like, okay, this isn't just like a bigger gun. Like, no, I'm turning my suit into a gun now.
Right. Yeah. And it's just things that, like, had we known in 2010 what we know now, which is impossible for so many reasons, we would have, as a world, had better public health options, and also we would have made a better game with Sentinels: The Multiverse. And I am now trying to say, well, I can't do that first thing, but I can do the second one.
Right. So. Okay. And will you be adding characters, or will there be new characters? Will there be new stories told?
There will certainly be new stories told, because one of the things that we're introducing that's brand new with the core game that on Definitive, which it's already part of the core game Definitive Edition currently on Kickstarter, is events. There's event cards. And event cards, there's one event card for each villain, and one critical event card for each villain. So events are telling a specific part of the story. So
more good radio.
Yeah, right.
If you listen to the podcast, Chris just turned over to the computer yet.
The event cards are these cards.
Oh man, this is the first. This is the first for Shop Stories. Here we go.
So it tells you the name of the event. It tells you the date the event came out. It gives you some story about what's happening in this event. The event that we're looking at is called Moonfall. It's the event in which Baron Blade tries to pull the moon to the earth, which of course his deck is about that. But this is the specific event in comics of what comics told this story. So you can see here that we're looking at Moonfall, the name of the book. It shows a comic book cover. It says Moonfall #1, and this is going to be the story. It tells you the villain is Baron Blade. It says over here collection limit 0. What is that? Who knows? Don't worry about that for now. And it gives you a mechanical effect, which is just a slight mechanical effect that slightly changes the game when you play it. When you defeat the event, you then flip the card over, and it's turned sideways, which is not a problem in the tabletop thing. Oh no.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No. Here. There we go. You flip the card over, and it tells you the story of what happens at the end of the event. So it's giving you that story stuff. It tells you what comic books this event took place over, and it shows you a cover of one of the ending bits of the story. And so cool, you get some story, you get some event. It also gives you a collection over here on the side, which is a mechanical effect that you can use in a future game. So remember how on the front side of the card it said there was a collection limit, it said collection limit 0. Other events that you play in have higher collection limits, and you can use one of these collections. So this just gives you two different effects, both of which are things that you have learned from the course of playing through this event. So that is, I can go back to the way it was. Yeah, cool. So that is that event. So that's the regular event for Baron Blade. The critical event for Baron Blade gives you another event cover, but it says critical event at the top. It says Mad Bomber Blade. I wonder what that is. Tells you the date that happens, gives you some story, shows you a cover. It says collection limit 1, tells you how many collections you get. And then but it doesn't tell you anything about how to play the game. And that's because the critical event cards, regular event cards on the front, it tells you, hey, play a game against this villain. These are the rules you're using to play this game. Slight mechanical change that just makes the story feel a little bit better. The critical events say, all right, you're playing against this villain. Great. You do you read this information, then you flip the card over. And when you flip the card over, you get a different character card for that villain. Why, look, it's Mad Bomber Blade, one of the variant versions of Mad Bomber, of Baron Blade that we put out in the past. And this is a different way to play him. It has your setup instructions, it's got your game rules, and you play it against this villain. Fantastic. And this is where these villains are scary and hard, and so it's good to have collections, those collection bonuses from regular events of this. So we've done this where each villain has a regular event and a critical event, which means that you're going to see new events where there's like, sure, you could probably guess if you've been following along that the critical event for Omnitron is Cosmic Omnitron.
Right.
Sure. Great. Awesome. That's cool. That's awesome. We've seen that before. But as I mentioned, there's 6 villains in this core game. Those 6 villains are Baron Blade and Omnitron. You also have Citizen Dawn and Grand Warlord Voss, and you have Akash Buddha and the Matriarch, because both of them are connected much more to the stories of the Prime Wardens and the Freedom Five. And even they have critical events, which means we're going to get into seeing versions of villains that have never been seen before. It's brand new villains with story, brand new versions of villains for stories that haven't been told before within the game of Sentinels: The Multiverse. So, yeah. So that's a whole thing.
So
that
lots
we're
of new
doing.
stories. Will there be new, like completely new characters?
Man, you keep going back to this question.
Well, whether heroes or villains, because like, I mean, again, I'm just thinking of like in terms of a Sentinels fan, they're like, okay, how. Looking at the precipice, look at their old collection, going like, wow, am I going to have to just sell this? Or
right. Well, I mean, so I'm certainly not going to sell my original edition, just because if nothing else, I still enjoy playing it, and it still has a lot of good stuff in it. But that's to each their own. That said, so the core game, Definitive Edition of core game, like I said, 12 heroes, 6 villains, 6 environments. Sure. That's all set. None of that's new content.
Right.
Future expansions can and
will
have new content. Oh, not even saying we'll see. I'll say, yeah, I'm saying yes, that future expansions will have some things here and there. And a bit of that's coming from the idea that not every hero in the past had their own unique nemesis. Like Bunker shares a nemesis with a couple of the characters, things like that. And that's one of the things that we want to seek to correct, is kind of build out the ranks a bit so that everybody's story is as complete as it can be.
Okay.
So yes, there will be more stuff, and I know that some people are gonna be like, "No, more stuff," but like, yeah, more stuff. Sorry.
The market will decide.
Right. Exactly. Right. I am.
As long as you're being transparent about it, like and that's part of the reason I wanted to have you on a pod. Just to, for that sake of transparency, it's like, what am I getting into when I back this thing? Is it just going to be like the one set, and then I can just like merge in everything? It's like, And
the answer is like, as for you, dear Sentinel, and for you player out there in the world, for you, Mr. Consumer, you are welcome to buy as many or as few of the Definitive Edition sets as you want. I intend to make all the way through Oblivion, and we'll see what new things happen as the course of that. Because when I put out the first expansion, if people respond really positively to a part of that I didn't expect, or really negatively to a part that I didn't expect, I'm going to let that. I'm going to keep doing the thing that I've been doing since I started, and that I did a lot through playtesting, which is I'm going to keep listening. I think that's very important for a creator to do. So,
right.
Yeah.
All right. So, we know what's next. Usually I end the podcast on that, but we know exactly what's next.
Yeah.
So like, the project is going to end. As I release this, it'll end in a couple of days.
So are you? Is this coming out on this coming Wednesday?
Next Wednesday.
Oh, the 21st.
Yeah. So you guys are
Yeah,
ending on the
perfect.
23rd,
Right at
right?
the end. Yeah, we're ending around the 23rd. Yeah.
Yeah. So like and so it'll just be we're right in there for that last stretch run, because that's when the Kickstarter that's what happens with
Yep.
Kickstarter, right? They're right at the
Right.
beginning, right at the end. So then, and that's what's gonna happen. And then we'll see what, and the market will decide, you get the feedback, and then
Right.
at the end of the day, Sentinels is an amazing game.
Thank you.
Actually, you know what? We're going a little bit long, but why not? I have you, and I really want
Yeah.
to ask this. So in the as Sentinels was developing, we got another superhero card game
Hmm.
that has a lot of characters
Hmm.
and has a giant company behind it that
Yeah.
is shooting out characters and scenarios and all time. I'm talking about Marvel Champions LCG.
Yeah.
And the very first episode that I did to cover Marvel Champions LCG, I compared it to Sentinels. And obviously, like, I'm not a deck buildery guy, so it's like not really meant for me. I like the fixed decks, I like the story, tells better stories for me. So then I was a Sentinels guy. But I know a lot of people kind of like, okay, I don't want, I'm gonna move on with Sentinels anymore. Now this is a superhero card game for me.
Sure.
Is that something that you're also kind of in play, or is it like, I have enough of a fan base, I don't have to worry about it?
I'm never, ever in my entire life going to be able to compete with Marvel as an IP, Like, there's nothing that could happen that would make Sentinels a bigger IP than Marvel in my lifetime. And I am aware of that, and I have no problem with it. There's a bunch of people that will just sight unseen buy a game with Marvel on it just because it has Marvel, whereas that'll never be the case for Sentinels. However, I'm not saying that people that buy Marvel Champions are buying it because of Marvel and no other reason. It's a great game. It's a great game, and people really enjoy it. And I love that. I'm not. We as an industry don't spend a lot of time wringing our hands about, do we have enough games about trading in the Mediterranean? And yet, people are like, oh, there's two other superhero games out there. Are you worried? I'm like, no, I'm excited. I love superheroes. I made Sentinels Multiverse because I like superhero games. So like, yeah, give me more superhero games. That said, for me personally, and like, I'm not here to trash any other games, because like I just said, I like the game. It's a good game. It for me isn't about, it doesn't have the same level of story. It is like, oh man, you're playing this game, these things are happening, but it doesn't tell you a story at the table in the same way that Sentinels does for me. And I know for some people they really enjoyed the story of it, and that's great. But because it's a little bit more
I think
abstracted
even the
with
people who
the deck
enjoy
building,
Marvel Champions, they're saying like, no, we're not doing this for the story. I'm doing this because I want to play this
yeah,
character. I want to explore this mechanism. Like, if you
right.
want the more story stuff, you're probably going to go to our Sentinels. I guess I'm
I hope so.
wondering, did you notice, like, because you see the numbers, you see,
Yeah.
like you see what's happening. Did you notice, like, that there was an impact there? It's like, oh wow, now people are not really.
No, no. So the thing that impacted Sentinels far more than that, which we'd already been feeling before Champions came out, was the age of it. Was people like, oh, well, this
Right.
game's been on the market for a while, it's been around for a while, but we didn't see like a projected amount of sales suddenly drop because of Marvel
Right. The,
Champions.
the meteor didn't land or whatever.
No,
Yeah.
it was like Sentinels. Like I said, it's still popular, still selling, and like in 2020, we sold a bunch of core games Sentinels: The Multiverse. We are no longer doing that anymore. It's now out of print, because if we're going to make definitive, we don't want to be selling competing products. Like, that's bad for the market, it's bad for us.
Sure.
No, nobody wins. But we like that we continue seeing sales of the game, but sure, certainly sales of core game of Sentinels: The Multiverse in 2019 and 2020 were worse than they were in 2017 and 18, because the game is old, and but it's not just old in that it's run its way through its target audience. Of course not. Like, it hasn't begun to tap the depths of how many people it could be sold to. Like, I've sold hundreds of thousands of copies of Sentinels: The Multiverse core game, but it could be sold to far more people in far more markets. It's never been a game that's been on the shelves in Target. It's never been on a game that's been on the shelves of
Hmm.
Barnes and Noble. Am I shooting for those things? Like, sort of, yes, but I'm not building the game for that, because Target and Barnes and Noble is like smaller games than the size of the game we're making for. Like, we work with Target and Barnes and Noble on various other games, and they're like, oh yeah, we like seeing any games that are of a certain size or smaller, a certain price or lower. And we're like, we're making the Sentinels Definitive Edition. And they're like, that's too big and too expensive. Like, yeah, we know it's not for you. If you want to buy it, you can, but I'm not really worried about it. But point being, I know that we haven't exhausted our potential market. But the thing that we see more and more about people not buying it is not that, oh, there's something else I want to play more. It's, I look at it and I go, I don't know, it doesn't really stand up to what I expect out of a modern game. And that's not the fault of the core mechanics. And from my opinion, it's not the fault of the core mechanics of Sentinels: The Multiverse. It's the presentation, it's the trappings, and it's the sort of corners that need to be ground off of it, like we did for Definitive Edition.
All right, I have kept you on here a long time. You are working on an RPG over there, but thank you very, very much for your transparency, for your enthusiasm. I actually just emailed you yesterday, and here you are
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. No.
So, I mean, I know you're doing the press thing, but like, it's making the time for a podcast, and it's the one stop co-op shop. So like that, our audience is like, it's right in here.
Yeah.
These are the folks who are really concerned about it. We love Marvel Champions, but it's like, okay, there's a little bit of a war going on, but
Yeah.
there's
Well,
nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong.
that, and like I said,
It's
I
a friendly
also
war.
love Marvel Champions. The thing that makes me feel like I'm not just fighting with Marvel Champions is that a lot of people said they really enjoy Marvel Champions at lower player counts, that it's really
Right,
fun
right.
at one, it's really fun at two players,
Hmm.
and that the more players you're getting, it's not as good. And so my hope is that people can find it in their hearts to love both, and that when they have one or two players, they play Marvel Champions, and then we have 3, 4, or 5 players, you play Sentinels and Multiverse. And then if you're like, oh no, it's game night and 7 people showed up, great, you can play both games at the same time. You just break into 2 groups. There you go.
Hmm.
Um,
This was Mr. Christopher Badell of Greater Than Games. Thank you very much for spending an evening with me.
my genuine pleasure. Thank you.
If you can change your mind, it can change the world. So until next time, later, everybody.